Well, La Liga president Javier Tebas woke up today and had a lot of things to get off his chest, which included weighing in on a number of things, including FIFA flirting with the idea to expand the World Cup to 64 teams. Now, he said this: increasing the number of national teams makes no sense. The football industry is not just the World Cup, which is the most important event, but not everything can revolve around the World Cup. It is national competitions that support this sport. They are destroying the football industry, the one that generates tens of thousands of jobs for an event that lasts 40 days and to which only the minority of players go. Gab, what do you think about what Tebas had to say?
Look, Tebas has a role to play. He defends league football, and he's right. And he's right on the numbers, too. Most players don't go to the World Cup. The reality, though, is that, what's the flip side? You could say, well, the only league football that matters is in a handful of leagues, right? 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, draw the line wherever you want. So you got a lot of people fighting their corner. I think you have to look at facts. You have to look at numbers. I'm against a 64-team World Cup. I was in favor of a 48 one, even more so now. But one of the big reasons is, let's see, how much longer is this? You're adding 20 games, or you're going from 104 games to 124 games. That does not seem to me like an enormous increase. You do have to make the World Cup a little bit longer, unless you want to start playing 5 games a day in the group stage, which I guess is possible if that's where you want to go with it. So all this stuff, is doable. And then in the end, what are we talking about? A couple additional days, maybe? Probably not, actually. You could maybe even do it with this format. Let's be clear. He doesn't want an expanded World Cup because I don't think he wants Infantino to stick around, and he knows that some countries will continue to support Infantino because he supports World Cup expansion, and because he's worried that if it becomes a runaway success, they might have this every 2 years, and that's fine. He's the president of La Liga. He's got to look out for La Liga. A lot of people feel that way. For me, the more valid objections are, I don't think it makes logistical sense. We would have dead rubbers. And I'm not sure it makes financial sense either, because you're increasing games by 20%, but then you got to split the pie 64 ways instead of 48 ways. And to me, it just doesn't add up.
Shaka, he has a point.
Who, Gab or Tebas?
Both, why not?
I don't see the value in a 64-team World Cup. That's not.
Even if it means Shaka, Trinidad, Tobago, and Jamaica, we can probably get there a lot easier.
Well, we'll get there really easily if they open it up to 200 teams.
But it'll take the shine off.
Exactly. And I'll quote Alejandro Moreno in him saying the World Cup is an exclusive event. Mm-hmm. You're supposed to fight tooth and nail to get there. So you're supposed to be rewarded for getting there. It's not inclusive that you just have to be a little bit better than the worst of us to be included in the World Cup. I personally thought 32 was the right number. I will hold my hand up and say I thoroughly enjoyed the 48, but I still think 32 is about right. I don't see the need for any further expansion. So I'm entirely with Tebas on this. I am worried, as Gab was kind of pointing out some of the logistical issues. Well, one, the five games a day. They're playing on two different continents.
Yeah.
So that can afford an extended day, as I say in inverted commas. But also, how far do you go with this? Twice a year has been floated by none other than Arsene Wenger. And I am so against every further expansion. I think the tournament is just right. No more than 48, no more than once every 4 years. That works. I don't see a need for any more.
Yeah, Stevie, all these suggestions it's getting comical now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's getting ridiculous. I mean, again, nobody's thinking about the players. We keep talking about there's more games and more games for the top players. Well, expanding it is going to make even more games for the top players. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And quite frankly, I think everybody agrees that it would be too many. All of these things that Infantino has introduced. I think the one thing we should be thinking about is not whether we like all these things, but how do we stop this guy? Because it seems that nobody can stop him. And whenever he decides to do something, it's done. So we can all sit here and say, I don't like this and I don't like that. The problem is, you've got one guy who seems to have complete and utter control of whether he does what he wants. And I think we should be thinking about how we stop that, as opposed to arguing or discussing what we do and don't like.
Well, let's talk about then, shall we? Because that's also something that Javier Tebas weighed in on. He had this to say about Gianni Infantino, as well as the Flo Balogun red card saga. He said, in my opinion, yes, Infantino should resign. I think he has had his day, but he has the support of the system, of the federations. There's not much more to add, right? There is no opposition candidate. No one wants to present themselves to lose. And the overturning of the American player suspension, that's Balogun, is something of absolute gravity. They were lucky because Belgium eliminated the USA in the round of 16, because otherwise a case could have been created that could have cost Infantino his job. Since Belgium won, they managed to bury the thing. But these things are only the tip of the iceberg. Gab, they're calling for your friend's head.
I mean, I think a lot of people are, right? But again, the voters are the ones who vote. And Tebas hit the nail on the head, right? As of right now, and he is up for re-election in 2027, nobody has come forward to challenge him. And I think part of the reason is kind of the system, because when you step forward to go and challenge him, if you're a credible challenger, then the wheels start turning against you, and maybe they start turning against your region, and they start turning against the people who endorse you. When you talk about what FIFA's purpose is, it is to develop football around the world, to develop football with money. Maybe 3/4 of member nations wouldn't have functioning FAs if it wasn't for the money that they receive from FIFA. It's as simple as that. They wouldn't have women's teams, they wouldn't have youth teams, they would barely send out 11 people out onto the pitch. And the reality is, FIFA gives them money the only way it can, which is by making money through the World Cup. And he made an absolute killing in the World Cup because it was in the US, Mexico, and Canada, 500 million people, 3 huge economies, all these things coming together. He's not going to be able to make that kind of money in the next World Cup because it's Spain, it's Morocco, and it's Portugal. You're going to, even if the stadiums are as big, you won't be able to charge the same ticket prices. You won't have access to the same markets. You won't have the same level of sponsorship. And maybe some people have suggested maybe that's why he's going to 64, saying like, oh, look, I can't give you more money, but look, I can make you a hero because you've led, your country, which didn't qualify the last few times to the World Cup. My country in this case. That's the reality of the situation we're in. It's a political situation. You have to convince the voters that they're better off with somebody else. The voters say, look, I don't care about politics and hydration breaks and Balogun. I just want to be able to keep the lights on at my football association, and I need FIFA's money to do that. So for me, what's realistic, unless Infantino does something really, really bad going forward that's scandalous or whatever, which that hasn't happened yet. You would, some might say it's touch and go, but in the eyes of the voters, it hasn't happened yet. What it would take is somebody else to come along and say, hey, here's my business plan. Look, you made a lot of money with Gianni, you go make even more money with me. Because that's the reality of football. There's rich and there are poor, and the poor are going to vote for the person who can allow them to compete at football. Not just the men's game, the women's game, and the youth game.
Gab, here's a question for you, right? So the ultimate revolution would be for UEFA and the European teams to say, we don't want any part of this. Is that even remotely a possibility? Are they even thinking about that? Is there any chance that would happen? Is there anything that UEFA are thinking about in order to just change, number one, Infantino, but change what's going on right now?
Honestly, well, it's very obvious that the people at the top of UEFA don't like Infantino, and there are a number of European countries who this way and that way come out and are critical of him. Short answer is no. I mean, look, you had the FA from England. Who are they endorsing in the next election? Gianni Infantino. Why? because they want the Women's World Cup in 2035, I think it is. And I don't think there's any other viable candidates in 2035. But it doesn't matter because they fear the system. They fear the voters. Somebody else coming along. There's just not enough. UEFA, I think, is 55 member nations. I think there's a bunch of them that would still continue to be aligned with Infantino. Unless you present a credible candidate who can show that he can win, where you figure this guy or girl has a chance of winning. So if I back him, I'm not backing myself into a corner. And I also want to see how is he going to run the game better. In some ways, it was very easy for Infantino to come in and do so well financially for FIFA, because the people before him and the people running the confederations before them, most of them were primarily interested in stealing money. Infantino's shown them, hey, if you don't steal money, I'm going to make you a lot more money. We're going to be credible. We're going to get more sponsorships in, and the Saudis and Russia and whatever else. And you won't need to steal money because you're going to be really popular, because your FA is going to have money and it'll be able to function. And it's a very simple formula. I think it probably gone on too long, but you need a credible candidate with, I'm sorry to say, a credible business plan going forward. And it's not just going to be about, oh, look, Kylian Mbappe is playing too many games or World Cup creep or something. It's going to be about following the money here.
Well, Shaka, Gab brought up quite the right point in the sense that it will probably take something really scandalous for Gianni Infantino to be forced to resign. However, a lot of us could argue that we did see something scandalous in the whole Flo Balogun USA red card saga that we all chronicled so much. Had the USA won that game, as Tebas said, then that would make a stronger case for him to resign, wouldn't it?
I said at the time that the worst thing could happen, well, both for the US and for the World Cup, was the US to go on and win that game, because it would open up a legal nightmare for FIFA that I don't think anybody kind of anticipated or were ready for. The best outcome for everybody was Belgium winning. That's what happened, which brings us back to here. I think one of the other aspects to this, with everything that we've witnessed, is the expectation is, well, certainly the expectation before the tournament was Infantino would run unopposed next election. Maybe that changes, maybe there's a European candidate, but nobody else will stick their head above the parapet in that regard in going up against Infantino. One of the reasons being, he's got one more term. By FIFA's own regulations, which they manipulated to get him an extra term. I use that term very carefully. For him to get another term. But then, by their regulations, barring anything else, he has to step down. And then that opens up an opportunity for everybody to canvass everybody in world football, including those in Infantino's strongholds. So the politics says, let's just wait. It's 4 more years, or what's it, 5 or 6, whatever it is, remaining in this term, plus 4. And then everybody kind of runs on a blank slate, on an even pitch, no pun intended, and let's see how it sorts itself out.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
We all know in 4 years it's just going to be Gianni's mate, whoever he pushes forward. Here we go. Because everybody's interested in her. And Gab summed it up actually just in that one line he gave about England, the English FA.
Yeah.
They want the Women's World Cup and whatever it is. And so they're not interested in the big picture. They're not interested in the good of football. They're looking after themselves. And they'll all look after themselves and nothing will change.
All right, well, Javier Tebas wasn't just speaking about all of that. He also chimed in on the hydration breaks that nobody was really a fan of. I don't even think the players were at this World Cup. He said FIFA fixes things as it wants, for what it wants, for its interests, certainly not for football. And so if they need 27 minutes of interval, then they do it. Hydration breaks are a lie. We have them in La Liga, but when it's really hot. Here, the stadiums in Dallas, Los Angeles, and Atlanta had air conditioning. I had to put on a sweater in the stands. It was a lie, a break for advertising. Don?
Well, listen, I'm not going to get into the politics and the advertisement, but that's pretty obvious. But in terms of the hydration breaks, I mean, they are what they are. I mean, they've not just happened in this World Cup. They've been around for the last 2 or 3 years, and it's just common sense. If you're playing, whether you're playing in a Premier League game, in a World Cup or whatever, La Liga, and any domestic league you want to name, if it's absolutely boiling hot and the players are struggling and they need a break, it makes sense. Where it didn't make sense was doing it in Atlanta, where there's, there's aircon inside the stadiums. Now, I'm going to stick my hand up for Infantino just slightly here. And he got asked this question just a little bit, because he got asked the question about the hydration breaks. He said, listen, I'm in a difficult place because I can't have one rule for one and not the other. So he thought he had to do it right across the board, which is understandable a little bit. But at the same time, you only need a hydration break as a player if the conditions are, if you're struggling to play in them. You don't struggle in an aircon stadium or some of the places that were playing football. The conditions were fine. So it is what it is. Listen, I never really thought there was too much in it. I did at the start. I hated it at the start, but as many things as I watched the World Cup, I sort of softened and I thought, well, what's 3 minutes in the first half? And what's 3 minutes in the second half? It's not the end of the world.
Gab?
No, I think you're right. I mean, I think that there's a strong imperative saying that once you do it for one, you have to do it for everybody else. I think we should chuck something else in there, which is all the TV rights had already been sold, and then some broadcasters, and in most cases, broadcasters already had ad inventory. If this had been announced 6 months ago or before you sold the TV rights, FIFA could have been like, haha, look, you're going to have an extra 6 minutes to go and sell ads in, so give us more money. Then there might have been a point. That was not the case this time around. And one other thing I might add is feedback just from being around. A lot of coaches like the hydration breaks because it allows them to do what they're paid a lot of money to do, which is coaching. It's not just, wind your players up, give them the speech, and then give them another speech at halftime, but you can actually get stuck in. So, but what I can tell you though is when you're actually there, every single game I went to, hydration breaks roundly booed by the fans in the stands, and understandably why.
Stevie, you want to scrap this
Well, there's
up.
nothing, Don's talking about the hydration break, and, that would suggest that common sense prevailed. But there's nothing common sense about all the stuff they do. It's never common sense. I mean, it's like the corner kick. If the referee got it wrong and it was a corner, then they gave a corner. But if it was the other way around, they didn't do it. So nothing they do is about common sense and being fair, because if they'd been fair, there'd be that one with the corners and a lot of other things that would be fair across the board. So if it was just about common sense, then they wouldn't have had hydration breaks in the indoor stadium. So don't kid yourself. There's nothing they do is about common sense or what's best for the game. It's about making the extra buck, regardless of what the cost is.
Well, you know what they say, common sense is not common, Shaq.
Well,
I don't know why I came to you for that one.
You just wait till you hear what I have to say. Now, first of all, I'll say, at the start of the tournament, I was all for it. And while I understand the criticism, there's some precedent to it, and we've discussed it whether they like it or not. So, for instance, just as a throwaway example, in the FA Cup, when they only use VAR up to a certain round or after a certain round, because not all grounds have it, you make the argument, well, if you have it, use it. Help the referee out. I saw this in a similar vein. I will say, though, I went to England-Ghana, which was played up in Boston Stadium, as it was then. It's now Foxborough all of a sudden again. And it was raining. It was a little cold. The break, when it came, it just felt so unnatural in the game. It really did. And while I've been watching games all tournament long, and you get to know the hydration breaks are coming, but sitting in the stadium as an ex-player and seeing all of a sudden you think the game is building a certain momentum, and then there's a break. It just felt unnatural to the game. And from that point, I just started to hate everything about the hydration breaks. Watching it on television, I did not even go back. I didn't have an issue. But just seeing it play out in real time through an ex-player's eyes, it felt completely wrong.
Do you know, even the final with the halftime show, that's got nothing.
27
That wasn't
minutes
for
too
football.
long.
That wasn't for the good of the game. That was because they're charging people stupid money, and they've got all these celebrities.
You didn't like Justin Bieber?
Absolute garbage. Get lost. I'll tell you what. I was sat in the house. I wasn't even at the game. I'm like, get this off and get the game
You
on.
like a bit of Coldplay, though.
No, I don't. I don't in the middle of a game of football. I want to see football, and I want the football experience. Sitting and listening to Madonna and all that nonsense. Give me a break. Get lost.
You didn't appreciate the Muppets?
Nothing.
You know, the Muppets?
No, and it's got nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do with football. And yet again, forget the players. Forget the players have got to sit and wait for half an hour.
Yeah.
So, I mean, nothing. Just nothing this mob does is for the game. Absolutely nothing.
I tell you what, well, I'm from a different generation of Stevie Nichols, and I'm with him on this one. I love me some Justin Bieber. I'm a huge believer, but that halftime show is about 27 minutes too long, in my opinion.